What's going on, my YouTube friends? It is Trevor coming at you from the Tesla Model 3 on the FSD mode yet again. And I want to talk to you guys about Bitcoin and MSTR yet again. Okay, so we got some pretty big news. As of yesterday, Mizuho came out with a price target of $484 per share, and that's within the next 12 months. So that is a, 200% almost gain from where we're at today. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into that, as well as I wanted to talk a little bit more about the USD reserve, basically the cash that MSTR put on their balance sheet, and why it's a really, really, really big deal. And then finally, I want to talk about a little bit of MNAV stuff, right? I want to talk about where their MNAV is at, where I see their MNAV going, and just the overall consensus about the MNAV of MSTR. So yeah, guys, with that, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. We talk about MSTR specifically every single day, but then we also talk about Bitcoin and Tesla and NVIDIA and AI and robotics and these kinds of things on a daily basis, because that's what I feel is going to be like the next big industry, right? AI and robotics. I think it's going to be the next multi-trillion-dollar industry. So everyone that watches my channel gets a little bit of news in real time. So try to bring breaking news to you guys and also my opinions. So yeah, guys, definitely consider subscribing if you haven't. Please like the video. It helps promote the video, as well as let me know your Bitcoin price targets by the end of the year. Also, your MSTR price targets by the end of the year. Okay, so first things first, Mizuho. This is a $2 trillion asset management company, right? Where they have around $2 trillion worth of assets under management. And so it's a big deal. They previously had a price target of around $565 on MSTR. And they talked about that, I want to say, in early November. And then we've seen this recent drawdown in MSTR price. And yeah, now we're seeing MSTR around $184, $185. So they did reduce their price target, but not by a whole lot, by about $100 per share. So yeah, if you were to buy it today, let's say Mizuho's idea plays out perfectly, you're buying at $185 a share for MSTR, and then within a year it's $464. Like I said, that's around 200% gain. So they're very, very, very much bullish on MSTR and Bitcoin, as well as most of the big investment firms, right? Because they can see where their clients want to put their money, right? All these investment banks, they can see the writing on the wall. I think that's pretty obvious, and they've already stated this many, 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 many times. You even saw the BlackRock the BlackRock CEO yesterday come out and have an interview and talk even more about how bullish he is on Bitcoin, because people just love it, right? How he was wrong previously, and we kind of know that BlackRock thinks that the world of Bitcoin with the IBIT ETF, right? So it's not it wasn't world-shaking news, but it is just, it's nice to see a CEO humble himself, say, hey, come out and say, hey, I was wrong. Now we're pivoting. We've got this IBIT ETF, and we're seeing a lot of success with it, right? It's one of the largest conglomerates of Bitcoin, in the world. They've got, I want to say, close to 900,000 Bitcoin, 800,000 Bitcoin. I can't even remember the exact number, but they have a lot of Bitcoin over there under management within the IBIT ETF. So yeah, like I said, it is a price decrease from Mizuho, but it's still there, right? And it's still a 200% upside in the next year. So that's nothing to scoff at. I don't know many other investments that I think will go up 200% next year. But me, as a guy on YouTube, this is not financial advice. Don't sue me, bro. I could definitely see a price of $464 by next year. I could see much higher, if we're being real. I think if Bitcoin is 150K to 200K, by this time next year, I think we're going to be a lot higher than 464 on MSTR personally, because MSTR continues to accumulate Bitcoin, right? They continue to accumulate it in the 90Ks, in the 80Ks, in the 100Ks, right? So right now they're actually underwater on some of their Bitcoin buys. Their cost basis, they've still made money on their entire cost basis of Bitcoin, but the most recent Bitcoin buys that were in the 100s, 110s, 120s, they're obviously underwater on those. They've temporarily lost money on those investments, right? But they're still stacking Satoshis, right? They're stacking sats. So yeah, it's at a much higher rate than they're increasing outstanding shares. That's the other big part too. It's like they actually are accreting Bitcoin for shareholders, and that whole idea behind accreting Bitcoin for shareholders has been challenged recently um, by a lot of big name people. Brad Gerstner, Jason Calacanis. I can't even remember all the other ones, but a lot of people on X are throwing MSTR under the bus right now, and they're just joining in on the joining in on the fun. But it's like all of these things are still true. Everything that Michael Saylor's ever said about Bitcoin accretion for shareholders and Bitcoin accumulation and the long-term prospects about Bitcoin, it's really hard to argue against. That's my personal opinion from a guy on YouTube. Don't sue me, bro. But I believe in Bitcoin, so I believe in MSTR. Okay. So second off, let me talk about the new $1.44 billion USD reserve that MSTR put onto their balance sheet, which is quite funny the way they put it. Call it the USD strategic reserve, right? When really all they did is they put cash on their balance sheet, right? That's the idea. They put cash on their balance sheet. But yeah, from what I saw, it's about 21 months worth of dividend payments, right? So that's a big deal. That gives you almost 2 years, right? Can you imagine if they had like 5 to 10 years worth of dividend payments on the cash balance sheet? Who would be calling them a Ponzi scheme at that point? I mean, at that point, it's like, hey, does Bitcoin fail completely, utterly and completely, and just die? Because if that happens, yeah, MSTR loses and it's going to go to zero. But otherwise, if Bitcoin, that can, I mean, you guys kind of get what I'm saying here, right? Like if you can get past one or two Bitcoin bear cycles with just the money you have on your cash balance sheet to pay off loan obligations and dividend obligations, then who is going to sit there and say, MSTR at that point, they'd have what, I don't know, $60 billion, $55 billion in Bitcoin, and maybe let's say 5 billion, 10 billion in cash. It's like they're pretty good. They're pretty good for the future. You know what I mean? I think they're fine with just 21 months. I think in 21 months we're going to see a Bitcoin price that's much, 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 much higher than what it's at now. And history, if history repeats itself, we'll see that as well. So it's not even just my opinion from a guy on YouTube. It's historical precedent is what this is. So yeah, not only does it just cover them and basically solidify them, make their whole entire strategy just bulletproof. I think they should add to it. Like I said, I would love to see them have 3, 4, 5 years worth of dividend payments on the balance sheet, right? That would be well, what are the bears going to complain about now, right? But the other thing is not only do bears look at this, but also the people that decide who goes into the S&P 500 decide on this, right? And by market capitalization alone, I mean, Strategy Inc. is a gigantic company. Like I said, I think they're worth $55 to $60 billion. So that would be top 20% of the S&P 500. So they're already just a huge company, right? But now, if they can show further and further, basically, if they're able to get better credit ratings, is really what it boils down to. Because, I mean, just a few months ago, Strategy Inc. was given a B- credit rating by I want to say it was by some Federal Bureau of Credit, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It was some prominent credit bureau that gave them a B- credit rating, which I believe is actually higher than the United States credit rating today, right? So take that for what you want. But it's if they did have they have 1.5 billion on the balance sheet now. If they increase that to 3 or 5, I'm sure that credit rating would go up to a B+, A-, A, something like that. Where it's these essentially Strategy Inc. will just never get margin called. You know what I mean? If they have enough money on the balance sheet to cover all the dividends, cover all the all the debt obligations, the loan obligations, then you're good, right? This kind of draws back into just all sorts of things with MSTR. So yeah, it's multifaceted as to how important this USD strategic reserve is, and I'm surprised they didn't have it before, because it boils a lot of things down to math, and even skeptics, this has to cover a few of the skeptics to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll buy MSTR now, or I'll buy Stretch, right? I don't know if you guys saw this, but the the interest rate essentially that you get, the dividend on Stretch went up yet again. So I want to say it's up by like another 25% or something like that. So now I think the Stretch dividend is 10.75%, and Stretch, the STRC, is back up to almost $97, $98, right? So that was a big deal for Stretch, right? So when MSTR got all that, 1.4 billion in USD cash strategic reserve, it definitely eased a lot of fears of people that were thinking about buying Stretch, right? Because we saw quite a bit of volatility in STRC, right? We saw a lot of it, in my opinion, where Stretch was going between 90 and 100, right? And this is supposed to be like $100 all the time, right? That's the idea behind Stretch. So if you buy it at like 98, 99 with your emergency fund or with like your savings account, and then it goes down to 92, people are not going to be, super happy about that, right? Because this is supposed to be a super non-volatile asset that you just get a dividend for, and then the MSTR uses it to buy more Bitcoin, right? So as long as that plays out, then you'll get a lot of money in Stretch, STRC, and probably a lot of money in the other preferreds as well. But like MSTR is very, very sensitive, basically, to these dividends, to these preferred stocks. So like what I'm saying is the preferred stocks need to do well in order for MSTR to buy more Bitcoin, right? So in order to accumulate more Bitcoin in an accretive way for shareholders, you have to have these preferred stocks do well, right? So in the short term, yeah, maybe it looks like Michael Saylor and Strategy are like prioritizing the preferred stocks rather than the common stock. But what's the end game here? The end game is accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can, and try not to sell any of it, right? It's not issue as many preferreds just for no reason, right? The whole idea is MSTR. We want MSTR to go up, and we want Bitcoin to go up. So yeah, it seems like sometimes Michael Saylor is prioritizing the preferreds, but he's really not. If anything, it's like a short-term prioritization. It's a short-term need to get this figured out kind of a thing, and then accumulate on the common stock. So yeah, one last thing is the MNAV. The MNAV is still around 1.0 to 1.1. So there's still very, very little, if any, premium associated with MSTR. So that's something else I wanted to bring up to you guys, saying that, hey, historically the MNAV has been much, much higher. So it looks like a good time to buy. I'm not a financial advisor, so don't sue me. Yeah, guys, with that, I think I'm done with my spiel today. If you made it this far, almost 13 minutes in, what are you doing? If you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe. We talk about MSTR, brand new breaking news every single day. Bitcoin, brand new breaking news every single day. So yeah, definitely consider subscribing. And yeah, guys, let me know what your Bitcoin price targets are below, and have yourself a great day.